week, appreciate your time. My name is Lydia Bustamante. I'm going to sit with you if that's okay, just so we can have a conversation. Yeah. How many people are familiar with the Office of Racial and Social Equity? Does that sound familiar? We have a thing, right? It exists here somewhere. I don't know, somebody did something. So we are a division of the city manager's office, right? And so Zulma Maciel is our director. I'm relatively new to her team. I've worked at Sacred Heart Community Service in the nonprofit sector, as well as in philanthropy, and working with the Silicon Valley Community Foundation for a number of years. And I joined the team on January 6th to take over an immigration portfolio before I knew that things were going to get wild, right? So it's been quite a ride. Now, before I jump into our content, did you get that link? Okay.
Yes, it's up now. Yes.
Great. Our content on safe site protocols, I'm going to give you my very official disclaimer that every time I have these conversations, I have to let people know in advance, I am both Chicana and Puerto Riqueña. And what that means to you is that I'm brutally honest. So please don't ask me a question unless you actually want to know the answer, because I'll tell you. I think we should be able to be very transparent, have conversations. You have questions about things, I'm happy to answer them. Second is that I talk very fast. So bear with me. We're going to roll and we're going to get through a lot of content together, but let's just kind of have a conversation if that's okay. I feel like I'm going to try to answer the majority, the most commonly asked questions that I get from all the divisions across the city organization. So anything specific or nuanced about the protocol themselves, if you could save them to the end, I think I'm going to probably answer them, but there will be time for us to do that. So we'll go to the vision and mission. This is the vision of the Office of Racial and Social Equity. We have the audacity to believe that, everybody in our community and everybody within our city organization should be able to thrive. And we shouldn't have racial disparities at all, period, right? It's not rocket science here, but we have the audacity to believe this. Our mission is, frankly, and you could read it on the slide, but we're here to serve you, right? We're just not here to create protocols and turn people into policy robots. We really want to create a healthy organizational culture that embraces inclusion and belonging at every level of our team. So what we do, these are some of the things that you can count on us for. City departments often use us as sort of your internal consultants on how to create a more equitable space for everybody. So everybody feels like they have a place in our city. They're a part of the solutions that are going to solve some of the problems in our city. And so every department, from airport to zoo, is what they say. I don't know if they say it all the time.
Yes.
Is that, we work with people to think about, like, we have a protocol that we're planning on developing. What could be some of the unintended consequences? Who should we talk to about this? Who are the key partners working on this issue? So use us as your consultants. We also are happy to be able to be somebody that you can bounce things off of as well. Some of the beautiful smiles of my favorite people on the planet. These are also some of the most brilliant minds in the equity space that I know, and I would trust them with my life, and you can too. Now, before we start talking about logistics, I mentioned that we have 3 portfolios. So the main things that we focus on: racial equity at large, inclusion and belonging, and then disability affairs. So that's kind of our content expertise, if you will. But I want to provide some context so that we can really kind of lean in to meet the moment here. I want to start by just taking a collective breath together, because we're going to have very honest conversation. I'll have you change one more time. So before we go into the protocols, I want to give you a snapshot of the environment that we're operating in right now. These are not hypotheticals. These are real shifts in federal activity affecting San Jose families right now. First is this piece around us, really dealing with a rapidly escalating national landscape. Since January, the new presidential administration has issued dozens of executive orders reshaping immigration enforcement. Dozens more of equity-minded officials have been removed and replaced with enforcement-aligned leadership across the federal agencies. And Congress passed a major reconciliation bill on July 3rd that allocates $170 billion to expand immigration enforcement. That funds everything from ICE and Border Patrol, as we know it, in operations, to new detention capacity and more immigration judges to accelerate those removals. The second issue that we're up against here in San Jose is that we really have a loss of transparency. We don't really know how it's affecting our residents a lot of times, right? Unless we hear it from the ground, or unless we partner with educational institutions like Cal Berkeley and some of these data scientists to give us a better picture. The reason I say that is because since the change in administration, we used to get localized DHS data, right? It would tell us how many people in the city of San Jose have been arrested this month? What are some of the cases that are involved? That kind of thing. We would get that on a monthly basis. Included detention, right? All of that data exchange has stopped entirely. Even our congressional delegation that would normally be able, like our representatives at the Congress level who normally get updated data on a regular for their constituencies, they're reporting to us that DHS is no longer responding to their inquiries at all about the constituents who've been detained or disappeared into ICE custody. Third piece here is that our actual enforcement activity has really surged. So we know that more than 4,500 ICE arrests occurred in the year 2025 from January to October alone in the San Francisco area of responsibility. That includes the Bay Area, and we don't have San Jose specific data for the reasons I just described. Nationally, new data from the UC affiliated Deportation Data Project shows us that there's a really clear shift. Nearly half, so that's 48% of ICE's daily 2025 arrests in Northern California were of people with absolutely no criminal record whatsoever. So that contradicts the federal messaging that we're getting from our typical federal partners, right, who historically were partners of ours, to give us an inkling of what's going on in terms of this coordination. They were telling us we're only going after the worst of the worst, right? The data is telling us that half of those have no criminal record at all. There's also this shift that's most recent, really in December, towards denaturalization. The federal administration is ramping these up, right? And we're hearing from our lobbyists that they issued guidance in December to push field offices to identify cases of people who have already been naturalized. They're now, officially citizens. They've already taken the oath and done all of the things, and that the feds believe that they should be denaturalized, right? And they have a goal right now of 200 per month, people who have already gained citizenship that they're going after to remove that citizenship. Data shows this almost never happens, right? It literally in our generation, that almost never happens. If it ever happens, it's really because of significant fraud. And there have been 120 denaturalization cases just since September. So those people who followed the rules and became approved naturalized citizens are now being stripped of their status. The local harm here is already happening in San Jose. We've confirmed traumatic local cases from our partners, including mothers detained in front of their kids, and a San Jose grandmother that we just learned about a couple of weeks ago, who was transported out of the county, denied her medication, and ultimately decided to self-deport because she was just out of fear for her family's safety, right? We're hearing community fear is really rising. The Rapid Response Network reports 3,200 hotline calls in just the first 9 months of the last year. That's more than double the volume during the Trump administration's launch the previous term, right? So one of the things that I'm most concerned about is this recent kind of bipartisan reporting from Cal Matters. That's like a not a bipartisan kind of UC affiliated public entity. They confirmed really widespread racial profiling in California's enforcement landscape. And what that means is they see somebody that's speaking Spanish that looks brown, right? Looks black. And I'm gonna approach you and ask you questions, which is now, according to the Supreme Court, completely illegal. That is allowing federal agents and our partners in LA to resume these kind of roving immigration stops, right? Those are practices that previously were blocked because they relied on race or language or employment type. So here's what this means for our city. This is not hyperbole, right? The trauma from these enforcement practices are going to have generational consequences. And it's not our job as city employees to cause panic and tell people, oh, watch your back, and hey, everybody, ICE is coming. Like, that's not really our role, right? But I really wanted to just ground today's training in the very real moment that we're living through. Our state and federal lobbyists have been really clear to us in the administration that it's not a matter if escalation reaches San Jose, it's a matter of when. So I want to talk about how we as a city and as an administration are preparing for that in very concrete ways and what it means for the rest of us on the day-to-day. The administration and ORSI, I call ORSI as our Office of Racial and Social Equity, we're leading partners in this network called IPED. It's the Immigration Protection and Empowerment Network. It's a really broad, multi-sector coalition. It includes the business community, it includes philanthropy, local government jurisdictions, the county is there, right? You have some of our elected representatives are there, nonprofit partners, of course, right? So it's a multi-sector coalition there that are coordinating local response now, some of our efforts, right? So partnerships with our state, our other, we call them the California Immigrant Protection Center, as well as Cities for Action, which is a national coalition of other cities like ours that have similar policies to the city of San Jose. Cities for Action. We're learning really directly from our partners in the city of Chicago, DC, New York, and LA, which are having some of the largest brunt of some of these practices, about what escalation actually looks like in real life so that we can prepare for it, right? We can learn from their experience, know what's coming down the turnpike, and put things in place to make sure that we have protocols, right? So we know what to do when. Today's presentation is going to outline the protocols that city staff should follow if ICE appears on or even near city-owned property. And the local infrastructure is I'm also going to go over the local infrastructure that's being built right now to support this community. The trends that I'm talking about today are really going to show you why this training is so necessary. This is the landscape that our residents are living in right now, right? And why our city needs a really calm and unified response as city employees. So the good news is that locally, we're not facing this moment alone. Santa Clara County has already invested $6 million in immigrant support and rapid response infrastructure. Our city council has committed another $1 million. Specifically for City of San Jose residents. And then we also issued an information memo on Halloween that kind of outlines this de-escalation planning. So when things ramp up, here are the actions that we'll take accordingly. And if it hits this level, then here are the actions. And I'm going to email that to you. You'll have it in your inboxes. And I'll point you to the document just for if that's something of interest to you. Also, frankly, none of us can do this stuff alone. So we're leaning on private sector and philanthropic partners that are pulling together investment funds, they call them rapid response funds, because it takes all of us, right? We can't do it all. And that also brings us really why you matter in this work. Each of us in our roles across the city is part of the infrastructure that's going to keep San Jose residents safe and informed and protected. So the way that we respond in the moment, calmly, consistently, legally, right, is going to help prevent escalation and preserve trust in the city. So we're going to walk through the protocols that help us do exactly that. The key, let's go one more time. Hopefully there's a little bit of helpful context. Sorry to good morning, hi, I'm here. But I feel like I wanted to really prepare you for today's meeting where we're going to accomplish these 3 things on the screen. I was invited here to give you a 30-minute overview of what the city's SafeSec protocols say and to offer a set of resources. So your team can feel prepared and ready for any scenario in which you're faced with immigration enforcement efforts while you're on the job. So we're going to dive into logistics. I gave you a handout. There's also an actual protocol that, again, I'll put it in your inbox all in one place so you can kind of cross-reference them. But I'm just going to go through the flow chart so we can just talk through logistics quickly and then do some FAQs. Don't worry. You do not have to be an attorney or an expert in immigration policy to know how to handle an interaction with ICE. But my experience is that staff up and down the city organization and all the way across really just feel more equipped to deal with emergent situations when we feel like we know what's going on, right? And how it's going to affect our jobs. And then B, that we know that at least there's a plan for what to do, right? So in those situations, you at least feel like you're in the know. So in January, literally this last Tuesday, the last council meeting, City Council also adopted a new policy. It's 715. I'm going to attach it as well. I also just gave you an FAQ there. It directly supports and strengthens our existing SafeSec protocols. The policy formally basically says that you can't use city-owned or city-controlled lots or parking garages or open spaces for the purpose of civil immigration enforcement activity. That includes staging areas, processing locations, or any operation bases, right? So you can't use city property, just do it somewhere else. This is not the space for you. So essentially, it makes it really clear that these are the kinds of activities they can't do on our property. The policy outlines how the city is going to implement that direction. So while we're going to start using standardized signage at all of our locations, just making sure that staff are informed on how to report concerns and using property management tools whenever we need things that we would normally do, but just that we want to be able to take this extra step around on strengthening those policies. So the training we're going through today is not only still relevant, but it's also directly aligned with the policy they just passed this last Tuesday. Okay, híjole, all that context, right? Like, let's just get into. I do need to say, finally, I want to acknowledge that the CMO also issued an info memo on Halloween that outlines the overall de-escalation process. So I'm not going to go through this in detail. Again, I'll send it to you if that's something of interest to you. But what we're seeing right now is, I want to underscore today, we have not seen any raids or sweeps in the city of San Jose today. Okay. So people keep saying, oh, there's all these raids and not yet. Right. I'm not saying that that won't happen, but to date, at least not on in the current administration, we have not seen any raids. For your orientation, what we're currently seeing is in tier 1 or tier yellow. So the trainings and technical assistance that teams across the infrastructure around safe site protocols fit within this context. So right now, we're seeing targeted enforcement where they're looking for individuals who they have on a list that they believe are deportable, and they're doing what they need to investigate and try to remove them from the country. Right. In those situations, there have been some circumstances where people are nearby or family member, things escalate, right? Somebody else gets pissed off and I'm taking you with me and you're obstruction, and that's going to happen. Right. But right now, what we're seeing is targeted enforcement.
Okay, sorry, how would you like questions? We have a question on the Zoom. Do you want to wait till the end?
Let's wait to the end because we're actually going to dive into the specifics. And I think we're going to answer them for the most part.
Very good.
And if there's more, that's okay.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to keep this conversation pretty high level, but I just want to quickly highlight a few important elements. In the protocols themselves, you're going to see that we address all 5 of these FAQs. And as I lay these out for staff in every department, I like to encourage folks to really address the bipartisan elephant in the room outright. Admittedly, I fully understand that some people, staff members may embrace or even celebrate the anti-immigrant worldview, right? But here at the City of San Jose, our organization and its people and its elected leaders strongly affirm that all people in the city deserve to feel a sense of inclusion and belonging here. We want everybody who lives here and works here and plays here to feel welcome. And we demonstrate this commitment through both our policy and our practice. So regardless of your political views, this is how we get down when we're on the job. And I need to make that very clear. Okay. Actually, from my experience, more often I'm hearing from staff that are feeling really just anxious and confused and a little bit overwhelmed by all the frequency and sheer amount of anti-immigrant sentiment that's been flooding our feeds lately. It's a little bit alarming, right? So we're going to shift. I need to say that out, right? I don't care what your political views are, but here's what you do when as a city employee. We're going to shift to the practical part. This is what to do and step by step. Pull out your flow chart real quick. So first question I'm getting most frequently from department personnel is this. I'm going to give you this quick rundown, right? What to know up front is that these are legal safety standards. They're not personal judgment calls. You also don't have to memorize them. Just know the steps, right? As the city, we want to be one team, and we want to make sure that just like if there's a medical emergency, right? Or there's an incident where there's a missing kid or an unattended child you find by themselves, and you know that our response needs to be coordinated with PD and with other departments. And this is going to walk you through that. We want to stay calm in those situations. There's also, we're going to go through some color coding on this thing. There's staff roles, the first person to see the incident, and then there's the supervisor role. But I'm going to talk you through both because I feel like people just like to know what happens when I do that. Right. And I feel like for the sense of transparency, you want to know the steps that follow just so that you can understand what your role is in the bigger picture here. Right. So staff members, you're going to be the first person to see ICE agents, right? Or Border Patrol, because you may see it might be even FBI, right? Different jurisdictions on behalf of the feds have been activated. You are the dark blue kind of arm here. So we'll start there. So you see, or even you suspect immigration agents at or near a site. And the first thing you're going to say or do is that you're going to say, I need to contact a supervisor. Now, I know that because of the way that we cover our shifts, sometimes, there might not be your immediate supervisor on, but the idea here is the highest ranking official within your team at that moment. You're not going to confirm. You're not going to share information. You're not going to answer questions, right? You're going to say, actually, I'm not at liberty to be able to answer your questions. You need to be able to speak with a supervisor. It's against the city policy, right? And ultimately, you're going to pass it off to a supervisor. And what I would recommend and what the protocol says is that then you want to be able to activate the rapid response network. The rapid response network has a specific role in this process. And so I have found in a couple of situations where as soon as, if the rapid response network was activated immediately right in front of the agents, sometimes that can make things worse before they get better, right? It's like, if you tell somebody at the customer service line, I'm going to call a manager. Why are you calling a manager? And then it makes it worse, right? You don't want to escalate it in unintentionally. So if you can, maybe from a side phone, right, you're welcome to do that. What they're going to do with that, now we're on the yellow section here, right? This yellow section shows you what the rapid response hotline does. Their job in this whole process with county and city and PD and all of these things, their job is just to verify information. That's solely their purpose. In 95% of these incidents that involve these federal immigration enforcement activities, the person who is being detained, their constitutional rights have been violated. I'm not talking about civil rights even. I'm talking about constitutional rights. And most of the time, there's no recourse because there's no evidence, right? And so the reason that the rapid response hotline activates hundreds of volunteers is to verify what exactly happened and to get evidence for that family, right? That's not the city's role. We just let them know, hey, heads up, so that they can log the call if it's not, right? They also coordinate with the city manager's office as well as the county and PD. And they activate a group of volunteers that will provide documentation. Sometimes they take videos, sometimes they just take notes, right? So that later on they can provide it to the detainee. Most importantly, from our perspective, is that they have the resources through the city investment, the county investment, and philanthropy to also activate family support resources. Because often we're finding that people are being taken to various detention centers, and when your family member calls, they can't find each other. Right. So rapid response role is to also support the families with the resources to find each other and make sure that the family and the children get taken care of. Okay, so that's a really important element there. So that's what happens when you call that line. They're going to tell you everything that I'm telling you today on the call in real time, right? So they'll say, what are they wearing? What, how many of them are there? How many people are involved? Are they looking for someone specific? That kind of stuff. And you just answer what you can. And otherwise you just kind of let it go, right? It's like calling CPS, right? You let somebody know and you let them do their job. Okay, so supervisors, you are the teal or light blue kind of stream of thinking here, right? So you've been notified that, hey, there might be ice on, I'm not even sure, but here's what we need to do. And your first line of defense is really just to get some more information. That's literally what your role is, right? So if you happen to be that day the highest ranking member of staff on your team and you see that the incident, you're going to find out what is the reason that you're here. Can I see your ID? Do you have documentation that authorizes you to enter city facilities? And then you're going to figure out what is the document that they show you, right? And you don't have to be an expert here, but you do need to look for something specific. So you're going to look for a signed judicial warrant. And I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a minute, but that's really, really important. You'll see on the right-hand side, there's green, there's red, there's orange. So I'm going to just quickly give you this lowdown, but you'll see it in real life in just a moment. So you're looking for a signed judicial warrant. At the top, it will have U.S. District Court. And at the bottom, you'll see a wet signature from a judge. If it doesn't have both of those things, it might not be a signed judicial warrant. Sometimes they show you a document that says U.S. District Court, but it's signed by, an ICE agent, right? It's actually not a judicial warrant. It's an administrative warrant, right? So you'll see other documents that we've been hearing from Chicago, LA, DC, Portland, that these are other documents that they're showing us. And it turns out it's actually not a judicial warrant. And what this means is not that we're not going to comply as a city. It means that it requires the city attorney's office to determine how quickly we need to reply, right? So if it's a search and seizure warrant or an arrest warrant, those are both signed judicial warrants that say U.S. District Court, then we are required by law as a city to immediately comply. And there will be an attachment that shows you what specifically they're looking for, right? So if it's a search and seizure warrant, it'll show you on the back, it'll have an attachment that says, we're searching this part of the facility. We're looking for this specifically. We're looking for this person, right? It'll tell you, we're looking through the files. We want to see sign-in sheets. It'll tell you very specifically, right? Or if it's an arrest warrant, it'll have the person's name, what they're likely to be, where they're likely to be located, and what they have access to, right? So again, U.S. District Court, signed wet signature at the end. If it's anything else, you let them know. You inform the agent that the city cannot respond until the document has been reviewed by legal counsel. Okay, there are people often ask me, like, what if they just demand access, right? Because we're hearing that, especially these days, they just do what they want, right? So I want to underscore this. I cannot underscore this enough. You can verbally say, I'm sorry, you're not authorized to enter, right? You can verbally object. You can even inform other people in the area of their rights by giving out red cards. And forgive me, I came straight in here, so I'll drop some off at the front if you like. The red cards that tell people their rights. You have the right to remain silent, that kind of thing. But please do not physically engage. Don't stand in their way and say, I'm sorry, you can't. Don't strong arm them out. Don't grab them and escort them out, right? I don't want anybody getting hurt. And these things can escalate very quickly on the dime. All your job is, if they insist on coming in, is to document it. You can even take a video if you want to. And you can report the details after the incident. Okay. You just verbally let them know this is against policy. You don't have authority to enter. And I can't authorize you to go in. If they force their way in, you let them go and then you document it, right? That's the best that you can do. I don't want anybody getting hurt. So we went through the types of things that you're asking for and to figure out whether or not we're required promptly to comply or not, right? We don't want to be charged with obstruction. And the only thing that you're going to be charged with obstruction, the only situations that you're going to be charged with obstruction on is if you physically stand in the way, right? Or if you get into an altercation with them in some way, shape, or form, right? That said, if you are following the safe site protocols according to the city policy, and you're on the job, you are going to have legal support from the city attorney's office, okay? Because you're following the rules of your employer, right? Afterwards, so you think about if the media shows up somewhere, right? You don't just say, okay, you're allowed to enter and then let them walk through the building, right? You would escort them through and make sure that they're not getting out of control, and you escort them on out, right? Same thing in this situation. Say it says they're allowed to search and seize these specific documents, you escort them to go do that, and then you escort them out of the building, and then you document it afterwards. What happens when you document it, there's a bit.ly link here. It's also in the protocol themselves, bit.ly/CMO incident report. It asks you things like, who was involved? What time did it happen? Were there any witnesses? What did you do as a result? That kind of thing. It's pretty basic. It's not super comprehensive. And then afterwards, that triggers somebody in the city manager's office to start coordinating among themselves so that the city attorney is involved, the rapid response and IPEN network, Immigration Protection Empowerment Network, get activated. And we start with the chief of police, we start coordinating among ourselves in the city manager's office. And we activate, if necessary, depending on the scenario, we will activate the city council member in which they're just whoever's district it is, and the mayor as well, just to give them a heads up. So that's what happens when. That's a lot of information. Okay, so that's the gist of the protocol. I want to show you an example. Yes, we do that, so I don't have to bother you. Okay, so this is an example. This is an appendix on the back of the protocol itself, right? It shows you it's a search and seizure warrant, right? You see at the top it says U.S. District Court, or this one might be the other one is the arrest warrant that I talked about, right? But I also feel like people like to see a real life version that's actually implemented. So this is one I got from ACLU of an actual federal judicial warrant. You'll see it may even be typed at the top, but it says district court, right? And then at the bottom, it'll have a wet signature and an attachment that tells you very specifically what they're looking for. So this one says in the attachment, we're here to search the entire premises and the vehicles within this cartilage located at this specific address, right? And it's described at this specific location directly north of XYZ, right? So it'll be very specific like that for whatever they're looking for. If there may or may not be a second attachment, sometimes that says, specific people that they're looking for. All right. And then always there will be a double signature on that. So that's what it looks like in real life. Yeah. So federal judicial warrant, and it has a signature. Another question I get all the time is like, well, what if they want our sign-in sheets or they want to know, the staff sheet, who's working here today, that kind of thing. That has happened on at least one incident here since last January. And the short answer is no, we're not required to be able to give that unless they have a signed judicial warrant. And always, if they ask for it at all, you want to just direct them to your PRA coordinator. They're like any other member of the public, right? They'd like to access the city record. We follow a protocol like we normally would that sends them to the PRA coordinator so that they can request public records, right? And let them handle that regular procedure. Nothing out of the ordinary there.
So just as an FYI, our PRA coordinator is Steve McCollum. So anything, send it that way.
Yeah, thank you for that. What else? Okay, so let's talk about kids. If a parent gets detained, are we required to release the children to the federal immigration officials? This is important. I get this quite often. The short answer is no, you're not required to. But if the parent wants you to, then you should, right? You should follow the parent's request. In some of our programs at the city, we have families that are enrolled in the program, and we have an emergency contact for that particular family, that kind of thing. In which case, we've instructed like PRNS and those kind of programs, release them to the family, right? Or whoever they designated. We have funded a number of nonprofits to do a ton of outreach to create family safety plans so that those things are on file at their schools and at their after school programs, so that in the case that the parent gets detained, somebody knows who to contact, right? Again, we don't want kids getting lost in the shuffle or worse, kind of stuck in the child welfare programs, right? And sometimes the kids are old enough to tell you, here's my safe person that I want to be able to be contacted. You can do that as well. Top line here is you do your best to identify a trusted caregiver. That information isn't available, which 9 times out of 10, it's not for us as city employees. You're just going to do your normal protocol. You're going to connect with law enforcement. They're going to follow their protocol for a missing or unattended child, right? And make sure that child doesn't get left behind, right? So normal protocol there. If it's a staff member that gets arrested, and I know there's a lot of fears across the city infrastructure right now around, well, if racial profiling is okay, then what if I get detained, right? I like to tell people, especially those of us who worked here for a really long time, when's the last time in E-Way you actually even looked at who your emergency contact is, right? Like you maybe filled that out when you first got hired, but I haven't looked at it in a long time. After this conversation, go back and double check to make sure that's current. So we contact the right person. We're going to go into your file and we're going to contact whoever you want us to contact if you get arrested, right? If you don't show up on a job and you got arrested, in your own time even, right? You don't show up for a shift, you can know that we're going to try to make sure that you're okay, right? And then we're going to contact an emergency contact to give them a heads up, right? That we haven't been able to contact this person like we normally would, right? With regard to any of these scenarios, when in doubt, slow it down, stay calm, and then just follow the steps, right? You're going to activate rep response, let a supervisor know. The supervisor is then going to find out why they're here, and we're going to ask for documentation. Whatever happens, we're going to follow it if it's a federal judicial warrant. If it's not, we're going to document it and let them know that we don't have the authority to be able to give them access to the facility unless the city attorney authorizes us. So they should follow the regular protocols. Okay, that's the summary, right? That was a lot. I would be remiss if I didn't also leave you with some materials before we wrap up. Here's where you can find everything we covered and more. There's lots of ways to get access to these materials so you have them at your fingertips. All of the resources related to safe site protocols are now housed on the ORC intranet page. I'm also going to just send you an email right after this conversation with some links, because we're talking about it today. It'll be top of mind, right? The intranet page also includes the protocol themselves and also a bunch of helpful FAQs related to that new policy that we just passed. It also includes some messaging tools for what do I say when people ask me this. As city employees, we're often perceived even by our family as friends as like, you have the latest information, right? And so you want to feel like you're in the know about like the public message around how to calm people's nerves around this stuff. There's some messaging tools in there. You're also going to find links to order more Know Your Rights cards. Those are those red cards where you can order them for your team. I have a stack in my office I'm happy to provide. There's also San Jose United Against Hate posters. We've been encouraging city-owned facilities to put these in the frontward facing public windows, right? Because that's a visual cue to the community that this is a location that has safe set protocols, right? So we're encouraging that. As always, if you need help or you want to go deeper with your own team, just kind of reach out to us. And I'm pretty responsive in Teams or Event, I think. All right, these are some examples of posters that we're encouraging. First thing you do when you show up at city-owned facility, you want to clock the visual signage for what is a public place versus a private place, right? Public place really matters because that's an open section of the facility, and that's a different kind of rule of engagement, right? If it's a private section of the facility, that adds an extra layer of protection there. So you want to pay attention to that. This is an example of the signage that we are looking at based on the policy that was just last posted on Tuesday. Council decided that they were going to issue new signage that will go up at all city-owned facilities. Chicago just emailed this to me yesterday, so I thought I'd give you an idea of the kind of signage that's going to be available. Ultimately, we'll have to figure that out in the next several weeks. This is the poster I was telling you. I have a bunch of them in my office. If you want them for your own use, feel free to let me know, or you can just link and order them. Yellow cards. This is the rapid response hotline card. I've been encouraging lobby desks to have them handy. Keep them, if you're out there, regularly interacting with the public, keep them handy so that you have them available if need be. Red cards show people what their rights are. All right, pop quiz. True or false? Staff should immediately answer all questions posed by ICE upon their arrival. False, absolutely not. What's the first action a staff member should take if federal immigration agents appear at a city site?
Call a supervisor.
Call a supervisor. Avoid answering any questions, right? What's the hotline number staff should call?
482-08.
Oh, snap. Right. Okay. I know that's like bonus points over there. Okay. Which contact person should a supervisor contact at City Hall during an immigration enforcement incident? Specific contact person at City Hall if an incident happens at a city-owned facility. Your DCM, who is who? Matt?
Manuel.
Oh, Manuel. Okay. Give Manuel a heads up. Whoever's the highest ranking supervisor, give Manuel a heads up. Or if he's not available, then you can contact your PIO. Who's your public information officer?
It is Gilbert Martinez.
Gilbert. Okay, so the idea here is to activate city manager's office so they start coordinating the city attorney and do the thing, right? So that everybody knows what's going on a city-owned facility. The fastest route to activating that integration is your DCM. Okay, so the supervisor is going to give them a heads up.
So everyone, that's that second bullet point in the blue where it says supervisor or designated contacts. The deputy city manager is Manuel Pineda. He's basically Matt's boss. So, but Manuel Pineda is our deputy city manager assigned to public works.
Awesome. Thank you. What should staff request from immigration agents when they present any legal documents? What are you asking for?
What was the question?
What are you requesting from the immigration agents when they present you with a legal document?
Federal
judicial warrant that's signed by a judge. That's really important, right? Agents with an administrative ICE warrant are entitled to access staff-only areas.
Nope.
False, absolutely not. What should staff do if an officer enters without proper authority? You can document it. You can record it if you feel comfortable doing that, right? And you're gonna not interfere physically, right? Don't get anybody hurt. That's not. You're just gonna document it. Report it to your supervisor. What should it? Who should complete the incident report form afterwards? Absolutely, it could be if it's the highest person, right? I also don't mind if multiple people submit the incident report because sometimes it creates a fuller picture. What we're going to do with that incident report, one, nobody sees it but the city attorney and the city manager's office. Okay, so it's not going to be published anywhere. Your name is not going to be out in the open, right? Two is that this is a log through which, if necessary, if later the city attorney needs to litigate something or a trend in activity, they have a log of what happened, right? So at minimum, it should be the site supervisor, but also you can encourage staff members to submit the same report from their vantage point if they saw a different angle, right? Sometimes that's useful. Are city staff required to release kids to ICE agents if their parent is taken into custody? Not necessarily. Can they?
Only if the parent requests.
If the parent requests that I want my kids with me, you do that. That's great, right? If a staff member gets detained by immigration officers, what should the supervisor do next? Really juicy. Emergency contact on file with HR, right? Let somebody in their family know this person was detained on the job. Want to let you know so that you can find each other. You can also give them the rapid response hotline because again, they will support them with finding that person and that kind of thing, and provide legal support as well. True or false? Federal immigration agencies need to be treated like any other community member unless they have a valid judicial warrant. Absolutely. They're any member of the public, right? We're here as a city. We offer public services. We treat them like any member of the public. What should you do if they want access to city records, like a sign-in sheet or something like that, without a valid warrant? Kick rocks. Yeah, no, you're going to direct them to the PRA coordinator. Who's your PRA coordinator again? That's right, right? Pro tip, also complete an incident report to document the interaction. They made this request of us. Just want to get that down somewhere for city attorney. And finally, why is it important to complete the incident report afterwards?
Documentation.
Just make sure we have proper documentation in case there's trends, right? I feel like that's plenty. I feel like we covered a lot of stuff today. Ask me a question. How can I be helpful?
Jennifer, I know you had a question on the Zoom as well too. If you have that.
I don't know how to. Can you stop?
Yes, I have questions. I put it also in the chat, but as it pertains to the warrant, does it have to have a certain time frame in which it's executed? So let's say the warrant was issued 2 months ago, would it still be valid?
That's a good question. If it was a judicial warrant that was only defined for a specific time period, that would show up in the attachment. It would say, find this you're allowed to search between this date and this date. I haven't ever seen that situation, to be honest. I've only seen you're authorized to go and look at this location for this specific reason. I haven't seen them time sensitive, but I can't imagine that. I mean, it could be, right?
Okay, and then the other question about the judicial warrant is I thought if a judicial warrant is asking for a records request, that would supersede our records request.
If a judicial warrant, I'm not sure I understand the question.
So if the judicial warrant says any documentation or a person is to be obtained, would we still have to go through the open records request? Because wouldn't they have the right to obtain those records?
No, you're correct. So the valid judicial warrant that's signed by a judge needs our internal logistical coordination, right? So you would go with whatever the judicial warrant says that you need to comply with, and then you would follow the steps to document it.
Okay, and then last question. You had mentioned that incident reports are not shared, but if they are requested as part of a warrant or as part of an open records request, wouldn't they be able to be given to the requester?
We would redact any identifying information. We would only share it in aggregate, but ultimately that would be the city attorney's purview to be able to determine how best to provide that information, if at all.
Okay. And then if an employee is working and huh?
I said, you got a whole list. I love it. Yeah, keep them coming. What else got?
Well, we deal with the public a lot and we have people and we're often called on site when stuff happens. So my staff need to have clear direction. Although these, a lot of the stuff you said, when an employee is working and if ICE were to come in and request the employee, like they could see their badge and they were supposed to go with them, would the employee still have the right to be like, I have to contact my supervisor, I need to contact, I need your information before they can be removed?
If an employee is arrested, do they have the right to contact a supervisor first?
Yes.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. Those things happen very, very quickly. And so in incidents like, for example, in the city of Chicago, when a city employee was arrested, it
Mhm.
happened quickly. There was no time to go and wait, I got to talk to a friend. Like you don't get to phone a friend in those situations, right? They happen very quickly. So that's why everyone in the community, whether you're city staff or otherwise in the public, is being encouraged to activate the rapid response network so that we have more eyes on the ground in those situations.
So in an instance where somebody comes in to a public facility and the supervisor's on site and then they see the employee's badge name or they introduce themselves and they take the employee, this supervisor doesn't have the right to go and ask them for their information or start the process. They would just immediately contact internal staff and then get their next of kin.
That feels like two different questions. So your first question was, if the person is detained, can they say, hold on, I need to go talk to a supervisor, which
Right.
they can do that, but they're not going to comply. I can tell you right now, the feds are going to be like, no, right? Second, on the other hand, if we see an employee that's being taken, if other people or the supervisor can go and let them know you can't take that and interact with them. We can verbally object, absolutely, right?
Okay.
We let them know you're a city employee. It's against our protocol to authorize you to enter into a city-owned facility. What you can ask, why are you taking this person? I'd like to see a warrant. You can say all of those things. And control what the feds are going to do in response to our question, but we can certainly, it is not obstruction to inquire for more information and to follow the city's protocols.
Okay. And then you mentioned that parking garages are not permitted to be as like centers where they can obtain people. Who's going, like, the enforcement part of that? Would that be something that our in-house security would address, or if that's something that we as employees, if we see it, would need to address, or we just go through the proper protocols of contacting our point of contacts? Like, who's
So
enforcing that?
yeah, in the FAQs that I just distributed, and my apologies for not emailing them out in advance, but literally this was literally passed on Tuesday. So I'm trying to do right after this conversation, I will email them so you'll have them in front of you. And it explains kind of the enforcement mechanism, which really is follow the protocols, right? So ultimately what you're doing in those situations is you're going to have somebody activate the rapid response network, right? You're going to find out if they have documentation that authorizes them to be on site. You're going to document it afterwards after you've contacted somebody in the city manager's office, right?
Okay.
So you're
And then,
still going to do the same things. That said, the new policy does not say they're not allowed to do immigration enforcement that is lawful on city-owned facilities. If they have a judicial warrant, that is a lawful reason to go in and do immigration enforcement activities, right? But what it says, though, is it says you're not allowed to create staging zones. So you can't park at our lot and then go and gather people at other addresses and bring them here in order to load them into your vans and use this as an area where you can like coordinate your logistics. Like you
I
cannot
see.
our property for your purposes, right? But if they have a judicial warrant that's signed by a judge, that's lawful, right? So
Yes.
it's very nuanced, but it matters, right? So the important thing is it doesn't change how we proceed in these situations. It just change, like all of the logistics stay the same. We follow the safe site protocols. We let them know that we're paying attention. We document things, but it does very outright say that it's against our policy in a
Okay.
form. Yeah.
And last question, sorry. So because we do public events and some of our events are private in our spaces, we don't have signage that says when events are private. Is that a recommendation that we start putting up signage so that they understand if they were to come to an activity that's held by the city in a public space, that it is rented out as a private activity? Because you said if there's signage that says that there's areas that people are permitted to come through, we have the
Yeah.
right to refuse them.
The new policy that was passed on Tuesday requires us to start creating signage, yes, for all city-owned facilities. We haven't done that yet, because it just happened, but that's the next step, right? Second thing is, in the meantime, for the last year, we have been encouraging any partners who are renting our spaces or using our spaces for whatever reason to be very clear about what's public versus private, right? So, for example, San Jose Jazz Festival happened at one of our parks, and they decided, as a result of what was going on in the political sphere, they decided to create gated areas and very clearly put up San Jose stands united against hate posters and that kind of thing. They decided to add additional security to make sure that they were clear on who was entering and exiting all sections with or without wristbands, so that in the event that I showed up on those scenes, they would be prepared with the logistical man force to be able to pull them aside and say, this is a private area and a private event. So that's an example of like how, even without the signage, we can encourage partners that use city-owned facilities to create those. We're also coordinating with entities that are managing our sites, like the Mexican Heritage Plaza, the Tech Museum, right? To take a look at the city-owned, the city protocol and replicate it if they so choose, but we can't require it of them, right? So I have an external facing version of our safe site protocols that basically doesn't have phone numbers of PIOs and things like that, that I'm sharing with partners. So if you identify someone who plans on using that, I'm happy to share that so you can share it as well, to say, hey, do you have any protocols for your event already? Here's an example of ours if you'd like to replicate it, and then kind of just encourage them for safety reasons.
Yes, I like that because we have some large events that will be private ticketed events, and we definitely would want to let our partners know of possibility for signage.
Yeah, so I'll include that in the email, the external facing version and the internal facing version of the safe site protocols. And again, you know, that's our next step. We have to figure out the signage situation, right? I have an example of Chicago's. I'm trying to figure out, is Matt Loesch gonna own it? Is the city manager's office gonna own it? Like, what does that look like? We haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay. Yeah, Walter, we can talk offline about it too.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Thank you.
All really great questions. Any other questions?
How rapid is the rapid response hotline team?
Well, they're 24/7 hotline. It's managed not by just one department or one organization. There's like 8 organizations that share the dispatch line. And then they have, I want to say, upwards of 1,500 trained volunteers that are, they call them legal observers. We're actually hosting next week a lunch and learn. If anybody just wants to learn more about what that organization is, or even if you want to maybe become a rapid responder yourself on your own time, right? We're hosting it on, I want to say it's Wednesday or Thursday of next, I'll email it to you, the flyer. Wednesday or Thursday of next week at noon. If you're interested, you can learn more about what they do, how they do it, who's involved, and if you want to become a volunteer, you can.
Yeah, because if the ICE agents approach, like I do events, over overtime and stuff, they do approach, and I do contact Jennifer or either Asia, and then they do their part. But these agents are still forceful.
Right.
And so now I'm looking for the rapid response team.
Right.
To help, because there's a lot of activity going on. And also I want to know, are the third party security people, are they briefed on this same type of information?
Yeah.
Because we will have the guards, like some good guards at the doors, they probably just let them walk right in without giving them any question at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say these protocols exist differently in real life in every department, right? So how we would implement the protocols in a youth program in PRNS is very different than in public works where we do big events, right? So I would really encourage you as a team to figure out, okay, now that we have this information, what are the if-then scenarios that are specific to our team's roles and responsibilities, and how do we want to handle those things, right? In some departments, they have decided to do kind of informationals or to share the safe set protocols with contractors, like security and things like that. But really, yeah, I'm not an expert in the public works world, so really you guys would have to decide the logistics on that yourselves. But it's a great question. In terms of rapid response, I will say the way their dispatch line is the infrastructure looks like. is the dispatch, once they get verified information, then they and they are able to get as much information as they can, they activate a text message response to all of the responders that are trained within a certain radius. And all of those people that happen to be in that zip code or in that location proximity get in a text saying, we're not sure if this is happening. Can you go and verify? So when you get the text, you respond and say, I'm on the job right now, I can't, or I'm going to go right now. Here's what I see. Here's the video that I just took, that kind of thing. So it happens literally live very quickly. At least that's been my experience.
So I'm hoping it don't get to that point where they come in with a warrant or anything, but how do I know if the judge's name is legit? Because I don't know all the judges.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we can do our due diligence, right? If it says U.S. District Court, it has official federal header, right? It has the attachment that tells you what they're looking for, and it's signed by a wet signature. Then as a city employee, all you can do is comply with what it says in the warrant, right? I can't go back and verify, like in real time, you're not gonna have time to do it anyway, right? Yeah, unfortunately. I haven't heard of false warrants being shown, but I have heard several times of other documents being shown and really quickly, right? And they're actually just an administrative warrant. Somebody sits in a cubicle, printed out a document and said, here, this is from our office. We're the feds, right? That has happened quite a bit across the country. Yeah. Other questions?
Can you take a picture of the warrant?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the city attorney would encourage you to do that. Then she can actually verify, right? Yeah. But again, I don't want you to do anything that's going to make you feel unsafe or escalate the situation, or right. Like, you have the authority to take a picture that's not obstruction. It's absolutely normal activity, right? And it's consistent with your employer's protocols, right? But if somebody's going to come and start approaching you and like, what are you doing, right? You don't want to make it worse, right? So I want to keep everybody calm, keep it safe, follow the steps, do it the best that you can, and then document it afterwards. I saw one more.
I was going to ask, kind of continuing on Mathis's question. So we do have a lot of big events that are open to the public, right? That anybody can join in. Right. Would that still be considered an open space? Like, for example, in a rotunda, because that is indoors, but it is open to the public. So would that mean they are able to come in because it's a public space? It's not being contracted by, like, for example, an external client and we have a contract with them? Or I guess that might be a question for Walter and Jennifer. Right?
So the rotunda is considered a city property.
It's a city-owned property.
So inside, so it would still be considered private. That's right. Okay.
Yeah. And now only for those that are considered, even internal departments have private events. So, like for instance, HR does a lot of employee directed events only. So only employees are entitled to attend those events. So that's why I'll talk with Walter offline about signage, because we can't put it on the rotunda. And if we do put it on signage on the rotunda, it would have to be general, that some activities are private and some are public, and then maybe put the onus on the clients to put up additional signage in support of. But it's a conversation piece we can have offline.
Yeah, I wouldn't designate, knowing what we know now with the new policy, I would recommend not designating this as a private event only, but just if you're going to do signage at all, this facility cannot be used for immigration enforcement purposes. That's consistent with city policy 715, right? Like that kind of thing. It could be very general or very specific like that, so that you don't have to go and change it depending on the situation all the time, you know?
Yeah, but the situation does change all the time.
Either way, it can't. City-owned facilities can't be used for immigration enforcement, regardless of the event.
So going back to the park situation, that city-owned property, you said that it was a public activity and it was up to the client to put on the signage and have wristbands in support of it. So you're saying that is not true?
That's right. What I was describing in that example of San Jose Jazz Festival was prior to the new policy that happened on Tuesday that says that no city properties whatsoever, including open spaces, can be used for immigration enforcement. Right? So before that, it was only public spaces versus private spaces, if that makes sense.
So when you say immigration enforcement, are you talking about them setting up like a station, or are you talking about them coming in with a warrant?
I think, Jen, it's more like if they wanted to come to City Hall, they'd have to park across the street at the gas station. They can't use our plaza. They can't use our garage. They can't go to the employee garage. They have to find a private space to even park and then walk it over.
I see. Okay.
And again, I will attach the FAQs so you can kind of read through them as well as the policy itself. It's all happening in real time. So we're all trying to figure this out together.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just not too gentle.
Do you have a moment?
The only person I have is, I've heard sometimes like these people aren't even ICE agents.
Mhm.
Like they're like, is that like truth?
Yes. Yeah.
And so,
That's the scary thing.
and how do you verify that these are actual ICE agents?
That's rapid response's job, right? So even if you suspect that you've perceived this person is dressed like it could be ICE, maybe it says DEA, maybe it just says before their materials were just saying police, right? Even though they weren't PD, and PD was getting pissed off because they're like, well, wait a minute, stop doing that because we're trying to build community trust. And you have all of your stuff saying police, right? So it's an issue. I also want to say that given the political rhetoric across the country, there's a lot of yahoos out there, right, that are posing as federal immigration enforcement and serving as bounty hunters, right? So that's a real thing. I can't say exactly, like, it's not our role as city employees to go and verify whether they actually are. Our job is just, if I suspect it could be, I activate rapid response and I let a supervisor know, and the supervisor will ask for a warrant, right? And otherwise we'll ask them to leave the facilities and document, right? You can't know, and unfortunately that's really on the rise. Sorry to start your day with really bummer news. The good news is that, I'm not a super expert in all things political, but I do know that, like, we're just people trying to take care of people. We got into this line of work as public servants because we care about our communities, and we live here, and we're proud to be able to be a part of a city that cares about its residents, right? And so we're going to figure this stuff out together. We'll follow the steps. If you get stuck, feel free to tap me as a resource. I'm here to, well, what about this scenario? Let's talk it out, right? We're all trying to figure this stuff out together. You don't have to make these decisions in isolated way. You know what I mean? Thank you for carving out some time to talk through this stuff. If something else comes up, send me a message on Teams or an email, and we'll continue to work together.
Thank you, Lydia.
Thank you everyone for your participation as well too. Lydia, if it makes it easier, if you want to share all the documents and links with me, I can blast it out to everyone as well too. And I'd love to get copies of those red cards, and then maybe I'll break with you offline.
Okay, yeah. Should I just drop them off at the lobby here?
So on the 5th floor would be great.
5.
Yes.
Okay.